Back in the early 1970s, Skywald was the quirky little comic book line that had some very far-out superheroes. They never stood a chance. Marvel Comics managing editor Saul Brodsky left Marvel in 1970. He teamed up with publisher Israel Waldman. Waldman had been reprinting comics throughout the 1960s under the name Super Comics. Taking part of each of their names, Brodsky, or should I say Broad Sky, and Waldman formed Skywald Comics. Skywald began publishing black and white horror magazines. They were sort of copying what Warren Publishing was doing with titles like Eerie and Creepy. They introduced anthology titles with names like Psycho, Scream, and Nightmare. They also attempted to publish a few color comics in the jungle and western genres. These books were 90% reprints with a new lead story that would be featured on the cover. For their jungle adventure title, the wild-looking Zengar was their jungle man of choice. Their western titles featured the Sundance Kid and a cowboy gang called the Bravados. Of their color comics, the one that's most sought after by collectors is their one-shot issue of The Heap. The Heap, of course, was the original swamp monster from the 1940s, and they did a remarkable job reimagining the character to fit 1971. This revival initially was instigated by Marvel editor Roy Thomas while he was having lunch with Brodsky. Thomas couldn't work on The Heap because of his Marvel contract, so the job of bringing The Heap back to life was given to Chuck McNaughton and Ross Andru. The Heap made his first appearance in a black and white magazine called Psycho. In other black and white horror titles, one repeating character was a vampirella swipe called Lady Satan. This vampiress was the bride of Satan, and she could be found starring in the pages of Scream magazine. Another horror heroine was Demona. She was a crashed space alien witch who came from a planet where magic and science were the same. As for Skywald's more traditional superheroes, only one black and white magazine attempted to crack into the genre. Sticking with their horror line feel, Skywald launched Hellrider. Hellrider was the creation of Gary Friedrich, and prior to working for Skywald, Friedrich had bounced back and forth between Charlton and Marvel Comics. He had won major comic book writing awards for his anti-war stories in Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos. At Charlton, Friedrich teamed up with Steve Ditko to create the Ted Kord version of the Blue Beetle. The story of Hellrider begins in combat. Biker and law school graduate Brick Reese finds himself in the jungles of Vietnam. His patrol is ambushed and he suffers a head wound. In a military hospital, he is given an experimental drug to help with his recovery. A doctor there mentions that there could be side effects. And unknown to all, these side effects include augmented strength, quick healing, and heightened reflexes. After Reese returns home, he buys a new bike and hits the open road across the USA. He lives the life of a biker and hooks up with a biker gang called the Wild Bunch. When he runs out of money, he leaves the Wild Bunch and joins his uncle's law firm. One of the firm's clients is a rock star named Julie Storm. And according to the story, she's the hottest thing in the music industry. Being the new boy in town, Reese gets the invite to a swinging party at her beachside mansion. Everything is groovy until she gets kidnapped by cat-themed masked henchmen working for a villain called the Claw. Of course, Brick breaks out his bike and spiffy costume and goes into action as Hellrider. In the end, Hellrider kills the Claw and discovers that the costume villain is, dun-dun-dun, his uncle. The other superhero in Hellrider is considered a major first. The Butterfly is the first African-American superheroine. She predates X-Men Storm by almost 4 years. Her story is set in the bright lights of Las Vegas. Marion Michaels is a well-known up-and-coming cabaret singer. When she's not headlining at a casino, she's out busting bad guys as the Butterfly. No origin story is given for her. She has the ability to fly and she can blind her enemies with psychedelic lights. In her first story, she thwarts an attempted kidnapping by the very same cat-themed henchmen that appear in the Hellrider story. The Claw makes an appearance as well. In her second story, she takes on the Brothers of the Crimson Cross. They are a racist clan-like group ruled over by the Grand Master. Like Hellrider, the Butterfly is the creation of Gary Friedrich. The Butterfly only gets 2 solo stories, but she does cross over into a Hellrider story, and it's established that Brick Reese, Hellrider, and Marion Michaels, the Butterfly, are friends. Skywald's attempt at superheroes was short-lived. The Hellrider title was only around for 2 issues. Writer Gary Friedrich returned to Marvel, where he created the Johnny Blaze version of Ghost Rider. Of course, at first glance, Ghost Rider has a lot of similarities to Hellrider, and years later, Friedrich sued Marvel over the intellectual property ownership of Ghost Rider, and Hellrider was a major part of his case. Marvel eventually settled out of court. Unfortunately for Friedrich, this happened just before he passed away from long-suffering health issues. A couple of years after Skywald's startup, Saul Brodsky left to go back to Marvel. Writer, editor, and former Stan Lee assistant Al Hewitson took over as senior editor. Hewitson had been dubbed Archaic Al by Stan Lee, and he took that persona with him to the Skywald editorial page. Hewitson became the face of Skywald even before Brodsky's departure, so he was a logical choice to take over the operation. He pushed for Skywald's Gothic Horror look and the use of classic monster tropes. The Skywald titles were full of Frankenstein Monsters stories, classic vampire and werewolf tales. There were stories based on H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. And from time to time they would even imitate the pre-code EC comics from the 1950s. Unfortunately, Skywald became collateral damage in Marvel and DC's war on Atlas Comics. In 1975, the Big Two flooded the newsstands to prevent the new Atlas comic line from finding shelf space. To do this, they first began printing a ton of new titles. Next, they gave the vendors a bigger percentage of the sales. The Big Two could do this, but other publishers couldn't. And to make matters worse, Marvel made a big push into the black and white magazine market. These factors all took a toll on Skywald. Established lines like Archie and Charlton managed to hang on, but an ultra-small publisher like Skywald found themselves squeezed out and losing money. And keep in mind, this is before direct sales and comic shops were a thing. The distributors would not put their books on store magazine racks, which literally cut them off from their readers. Skywald was forced to close up shop in 1975. Well, that's it for the story of Skywald. Hope you liked it. Please hit the like button and leave comments in the section down below. By the way, in case you're interested, or if you're just bored, there is an online archive that contains almost the complete Skywald library. So if you're into black and white horror stories, this is the perfect place to get your Halloween fix. So check it out. And by the way, it's free, so yeah, check it out. Beautiful artwork there, some great stuff, the kind of stuff you don't see anymore. Thanks for watching. That's it for me. Later all.